Imagine trying to build a 50-story skyscraper on a swamp.
Right.
You can have the most brilliant architectural blueprints in the world, the finest materials, this totally ambitious vision, but if the ground beneath you is soft and shifting, well, that building is going to collapse under its own weight.
Exactly. It's inevitable.
And that is essentially what it is like being a highly creative, high-output person with a fragile or, just an overwhelmed nervous system.
Yeah, the foundation just isn't there.
Right. So today we are not talking about delicate, pretty, mystical trinkets. We are looking at a fascinating text from a source called Crystals by Rob that details the metaphysical properties of hematite. And this text frames this specific stone not as a decorative piece of jewelry, but as heavy-duty, load-bearing structural engineering for your energetic system.
It is a complete paradigm shift, honestly, for anyone familiar with standard crystal literature. I mean, the source material takes these esoteric concepts and translates them into a language that sounds much more like, well, structural architecture and biomagnetic circuitry.
Which is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We are exploring how this dense, heavy mineral acts as a foundational pillar for your daily life.
Yeah.
If you are listening to this right now, and you're someone who is constantly outputting ideas, someone this text actually refers to as a soul architect, you almost certainly know the feeling of being top-heavy.
Oh, absolutely. That scattered sensation.
Right. Or what the source perfectly describes as excessive mental heat. Like, if you ever feel like your brain is a computer with 100 tabs open and the cooling fan is just screaming, this deep dive is going to provide a really unique mechanical framework for active grounding.
Okay, let's unpack this.
To really grasp the mechanics of hematite, as described by their author, we have to start with its physical baseline. Because in this specific framework, the physical chemistry of the stone and its metaphysical function are, well, they're completely inseparable.
They're essentially the same thing here. Exactly. Hematite is an iron oxide. Its chemical formula is Fe2O3. And that massive iron content gives the stone an incredibly high density. Like, it is physically heavy, it's cold to the touch, and very substantial.
Yeah, if you pick up a piece, you immediately notice it's not like holding a piece of quartz.
Right. It feels like holding a piece of metal. And according to the text, that sheer physical density acts as a somatic signal to your nervous system. It's basically communicating a demand for stability and permanence.
I find that correlation so fascinating because it brings us right back to that skyscraper analogy the text utilizes. I mean, if you are a high output individual, you are constantly building upward, right? You are strategizing, you are creating, you are worrying about the future.
Always in the clouds.
Yeah, and that requires an enormous amount of cognitive energy. It creates a massive psychological load. And hematite is not the glass penthouse at the top of the building. It is the reinforced steel rebar buried in the concrete below ground.
Yeah, the author explicitly positioned it as the antidote to the cloud mind.
The cloud mind, yeah.
Because when a person is constantly operating in their head, living in their imagination, or spiraling in anxiety, they generate that excessive mental heat. And in a metaphysical sense, heat rises.
Just like in physics.
Exactly. Your energetic center of gravity physically shifts upward, pulling away from your physical body and into your processing centers, into your head.
Which is a terrible feeling. It is that sensation of being completely flighty, unanchored, like a strong breeze in the real world could just knock you over because there is no weight in your feet.
What's fascinating here is how the text applies what it calls the weight ratio principle from structural engineering to solve this exact problem.
The weight ratio principle.
Right. In physical construction, you cannot anchor a heavy dynamic load with light porous materials like, say, pumice or wood. You need profound density to counter vertical weight.
That makes total sense.
So when your mind is racing and your energy is rushing upward, the text suggests that holding a high-density, iron-rich stone near the lower half of your body acts as a literal counterweight. It exerts a downward biomagnetic pull, drawing that excess heat out of your skull and just channeling it downward.
Okay, so if hematite acts as the structural foundation of our energetic skyscraper, we need to understand exactly where and how that foundation connects to the ground. Because a heavy foundation that is just floating in the air doesn't stabilize anything, right?
It just hangs there.
Yeah.
And that brings us to a concept the text calls the Earth-Star interface and the active bedrock protocol.
Okay, the active bedrock protocol. Break that down for us.
Well, the author posits that true grounding isn't just a passive state of, taking a few deep breaths. It requires an active calibration of a specific biocircuit. They locate an energy center called the Earth Star Chakra, positioning it a few inches below the soles of the feet.
Wait, below the feet?
Yeah, below the physical body. And this is described as the primary input and output port that directly links human biological circuitry to the Earth's broader magnetic grid.
Hold on, I have to pause and push back on this mechanic a bit because that is a massive, totally counterintuitive claim, a few inches below the feet.
I know, it sounds strange at first.
How does a biological circuit interface with empty air beneath us? Like, if I'm standing in my living room, the space below my feet is just my carpet and the floorboards. How does an energetic mechanism function outside the boundaries of the physical skin?
It is a really vital question. The text views the human electromagnetic field, the aura, basically as something that extends beyond the physical epidermis, much like the magnetic field of a bar magnet extends into the space around it. Right?
Okay, I can visualize that.
So the Earth Star chakra isn't a physical organ. It is the furthest point of your personal magnetic field's reach before it interacts with the ambient field of the planet. Think of it like a grounding wire in an electrical panel. That wire doesn't just stop at the bottom of the fuse box. It has to physically extend down and bury into the Earth to safely discharge a lightning strike.
That makes perfect sense. So by placing this heavy iron oxide near the feet, you are essentially cabling your internal system into the planet's grid.
Yeah, the text calls this establishing an absolute anchor point. But it goes further than just physical weight. Because hematite contains so much iron, it is naturally magnetic.
Right.
The author argues it reorients your internal magnetism. It grabs the chaotic, erratic static floating around in your top-heavy aura, pulls it down the grounding wire, and discharges it safely.
I am really curious about the interplay between the physical sensation and the esoteric claim here, because anxiety literally makes us feel physically top-heavy. Our breathing gets shallow, our chest tightens, the blood pressure changes.
Yes, very physical symptoms.
Right, so does the sheer physical weight of the stone in your hands or at your feet literally trick the somatic nervous system? Like your body registers this dense, heavy object, and your brain says, oh, we are interacting with gravity, we are being pulled downward, we must drop our center of balance.
That's a great way to put it.
Like, is it operating as a psychological deadbolt through physical touch, or is it purely this invisible magnetic circuitry?
Well, the author implies it is a simultaneous action. The physical weight absolutely engages the sensory nervous system, signaling the brain to drop its center of gravity.
Yeah.
But the text leans heavily into the idea that the magnetic polarity of the iron is actively working on the invisible electromagnetic field as well. It acts as an energetic grounding resistor, essentially managing the flow of current.
So we are dealing with a biomagnetic circuit breaker. And if we are cabled into this system, that immediately makes me wonder about interference, which ties directly into the shielding protocol, the source details.
Yes, the shielding protocol is huge here.
Because we do not live in a vacuum. We live in a relentless soup of Wi-Fi routers, cell phone towers, pinging notifications, and just general digital noise. It is a highly charged environment.
It is, and the text makes a crucial mechanical distinction regarding that environmental noise. Hematite doesn't just put up a reflective wall to bounce those frequencies away.
Not just a mirror.
Right, because a mirror just redirects light, it doesn't eliminate it. Hematite is described as absorbing and denaturing the frequencies.
Denaturing them, like taking the stinger out of a bee. You are rendering the threat inert, not just dodging it.
Exactly. The text explains that when a highly sensitive person is overwhelmed by this digital and emotional static, they experience what is termed polarization drift.
Polarization drift.
Yeah. The mental poles become misaligned. Logic and intuition, which should work in tandem, start to conflict. The individual stops acting from a place of proactive design and simply becomes reactive to every single external stimulus.
To visualize that, is that like when two magnets that normally attract suddenly get flipped and they violently push away from each other? Is my brain literally repelling its own logical processes because the polarity has drifted?
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. The incoming static forces your internal magnets to flip, and the heavy iron matrix of hematite absorbs that static and forces the magnets back into their proper alignment. It triggers a system-wide factory reset, neutralizing the polarization drift.
I really appreciate the practical application the source provides for dealing with this drift in the modern world. They suggest creating a literal stability zone right at your physical workspace.
The perimeter fence, yeah.
Right. You take pieces of hematite and place them at the four corners of your desk.
Okay.
By setting up this heavy structural perimeter, you are creating a hard architectural boundary. You are sending a biomagnetic signal that the space inside this perimeter is closed to external static.
It translates an abstract concept of boundary setting into a physical environmental anchor. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Once you have structurally secured your workspace from outside interference, it radically shifts how the source views the function of the mind itself.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because this completely upends my assumptions about this topic.
Oh, totally.
In the broader realm of crystal healing, the narrative is almost exclusively dominated by right brain concepts. It is all about opening your third eye, accessing intuition, dreaming, expanding consciousness, and embracing fluidity.
Right, it's very ethereal.
Exactly. But Crystals by Rob defines hematite as the exact opposite. It is labeled a logic gate optimizer. It is described as cold, detached, and computational. It demands rigorous focus and literally forces you to limit your scope. It is an anti-expansion tool.
It is a necessary contrast. I mean, for the soul architect we discussed earlier, having a massive expansive vision is only the drafting phase. To actually construct the building, you need what the text calls the left brain anchor.
The execution phase.
Yes. Hematite is not a stone for dreaming up new ideas. It is a tool strictly reserved for execution. It enforces sequential order and anchors the user in linear time.
Which is incredibly refreshing, a metaphysical concept that actually respects deadlines and linear sequencing.
Right, and the author introduces a really compelling concept here called logic gate leakage.
Logic gate leakage, okay.
In computer science, a logic gate is a basic building block of a digital circuit. It receives inputs and, based on strict binary rules, decides whether a signal passes through or stops.
Okay, yes or no filter.
Exactly. And the text suggests that when a person is overwhelmed with ideas and external noise, their mental logic gates begin to leak. They lose the ability to apply strict binary rules to their attention. They essentially lose the ability to prioritize.
So let's say I'm sitting at my newly secured desk. I have 40 browser tabs open. I am trying to finalize a complicated tax return while simultaneously drafting a creative presentation for next week, and my phone is just buzzing nonstop.
A nightmare scenario.
Yeah, I just freeze. I end up staring blankly at the screen, doing absolutely nothing. And the text refers to that exact paralysis as system drag.
Because you are demanding that your internal processor compute too many competing inputs simultaneously, and the whole system just halts.
Yeah.
To resolve this, Hematite provides what the author calls the grindstone frequency. It supplies the dense, unyielding energy required to force those leaking logic gates shut. It isolates the singular necessary input, allowing you to overcome what the text calls static inertia.
Static inertia.
Right, that literal psychological weight that prevents you from typing the first word of a report.
So if I am stuck in that state of static inertia, how do I actually use this tool to get out of it? The text outlines a finisher's protocol, but I want to understand how it solves that specific paralyzed at the desks scenario.
Okay, so the protocol is structured in 3 distinct phases designed to reboot a stalled system. Phase 1 is data intake. Yeah, and the strategy here is deliberate limitation. You hold the stone and consciously use its heavy grounding energy to shut down peripheral awareness. You are setting a firm rule for your consciousness. We are only permitting the data required for this single immediate task to pass through the logic gate.
So step 1 is actively cutting the fluff. We are closing 39 of those browser tabs.
Exactly.
Then we move into phase 2, which the text calls execution.
Right. During phase 2, the focus shifts to linear sequencing. The author recommends physically placing the hematite directly on your actor project brief or right next to your keyboard.
Oh, so it's right there in your visual field.
Exactly. It serves as a visual and energetic lock on your focus. It provides the sustained, unemotional endurance required for the tedious, repetitive elements of the work. It keeps you moving from step A to step B, preventing you from drifting back into the clouds to dream about step Z.
It's the engine for the boring parts of the job.
Yes.
And then, once the heavy lifting is done, we hit phase 3 completion, or the final audit.
This final phase leverages the cold, computational nature of the stone. Once the creative execution is finished, you use hematite's detached energy to review the work objectively.
Because you're usually so attached to the work at that point.
Precisely. Because it naturally strips away emotional attachment, it allows you to spot structural flaws, logical inconsistencies, or simple errors that you were entirely blind to when you were caught up in the passionate subjective heat of creating the work.
It provides the neutral eye of an inspector checking the structural integrity of the building.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have this heavy, magnetic, iron-rich foundation that grounds us, acts as a circuit breaker for digital noise, and turns leaking logic gates into execution machines. But the source material is adamant that if you are going to use hematite as a load-bearing architectural tool, you cannot just treat it like a pretty rock you dust once a year. There is a strict operational manual.
Reject. The author insists on a daily foundation check. When you sense polarization drift beginning, when you feel that initial spike in top-heavy anxiety or that creeping urge to open another unnecessary browser tab, you intervene immediately.
Nip it in the bud.
Right. You stand holding a piece of the stone in each hand, or place them under your feet, and actively visualize its physical weight sinking down into the Earth's bedrock, pulling the current task back into a locked, stable position.
And this is perhaps the most vital warning in the entire text. There is a strict dry build protocol for its maintenance.
Yes, and this is a perfect example of the physical chemistry dictating the metaphysical application. Hematite is Fe2O3. It is packed with iron. If you expose iron to water and oxygen, it oxidizes.
It rusts.
It rusts.
You absolutely cannot put this in a water bath.
Yeah.
You cannot do a saltwater soak under the moonlight, which is a standard cleansing practice for things like quartz. If you introduce water to this tool, you will literally destroy its structural integrity. It degrades the iron.
Yeah, the text mandates it be treated strictly as a dry build material. You maintain its physical surface with a soft, dry cloth. And to clear its energetic circuitry of the static it has absorbed, the author advises placing it on a slab of selenite or clear quartz.
Or utilizing smoke.
Right. Yes,
Yeah.
using the smoke of heavy resins like dragon's blood or frankincense.
Now, if the physical reality of the iron dictates that we cannot use water to clean it, it makes me wonder if the other esoteric associations listed at the very end of the text are just as deeply tethered to its physical chemistry. Because the symbology the author provides is an absolute masterclass in thematic consistency.
Oh, it really is.
The elemental association is Earth. The planetary rulers are Saturn. The cosmic taskmaster of restriction, time, and discipline, and Mars, the planet traditionally associated with raw iron and forward action.
The thematic alignment is rigorous.
But the flora and fauna associations are what really require a deeper look. The text aligns hematite with specific botanical herbs, ashwagandha root, ginger root, turmeric root, and dandelion root. And the animal totems are the cow, the bull, the horse, and the bear. Instead of just listing these, we have to ask why these specific examples are chosen. What is the biochemical or thematic link between a dandelion root and a chunk of iron oxide?
This raises an important question about the architecture of esoteric systems. Notice the shared characteristics here. None of those plants are leaves or flowers reaching up into the air. They are dense subterranean taproots.
Right.
They survive by pushing deep into the dark, compacted earth, pulling heavy mineral nutrients downward. They are the structural anchors of the plant.
And the animals operate on the exact same logic. A cow, a bear, a draft horse, these are massive, dense creatures with incredibly low centers of gravity. They are load-bearing animals anchored to the soil. They are the biological embodiment of the weight ratio principle we discussed earlier.
Yet the physical reality of the stone, its massive iron content, its measurable weight, its magnetic polarity is mirrored flawlessly by every single astrological, angelic, and botanical association provided.
It's incredible.
The system is not just a collection of arbitrary mystical symbols. It operates on the ancient principle that the macrocosm reflects the microcosm. The physics of the dense iron fundamentally validate the metaphysics of the grounding rituals.
The physical gravity perfectly matches the energetic gravity. So what does this all mean for you, the listener, as you go about your day?
Yeah.
Well, the core takeaway from this deep dive is that hematite is the ultimate architectural tool for the soul architect. It provides the dense, unyielding, magnetic foundation required to take all those brilliant, scattered blueprints floating around in your top-heavy mind and drag them down into reality so they can actually be built. Having a genius-level vision is useless if your mental foundation is constantly shifting under the weight of digital noise and anxiety. True creative power doesn't just come from dreaming. It requires being rigorously calibrated, logically shielded, and anchored firmly in the bedrock of your own design.
And it leaves us with a highly provocative concept to examine long after this discussion ends.
Oh.
If our modern minds truly function like biological logic gates, and if we are constantly suffering from system drag due to the relentless, invisible static of the digital age, well, Could consciously treating our physical environments like biomagnetic circuits be the missing step in cognitive health?
Yeah.
Could the simple mechanical act of placing a heavy, iron-rich anchor on our desks be a tangible solution to recovering our rapidly vanishing attention spans?
A heavy thought to anchor your day. Keep designing your skyscrapers, but do not forget to pour your bedrock first. Until next time.